We're ready? We are. Thank you all. It is now 10:05 a.m. and I would like to officially call this meeting, our special council meeting on the 13th of May, 2020. I'd also like to acknowledge that this is an electronic meeting being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I just want to note that we have all members of council present. I don't think I need to necessarily name them all, but we are all here. If you happen to have an internet connection and drop off, please log back in and the clerk or someone will let you back into the meeting as it goes on. No one's absent. We have all of our senior management team here as well. 2 videos online are CIO Hammond and our clerk is Mortimer. I also want to acknowledge that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. Their stewardship throughout the ages is certainly recognized as we move forward today. Over the past 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks now, we've had 2 sort of kicks at the can of our 2020 budget. And we've had a couple of different specific emails set up depending on the version the public saw. So we have received a number of comments from our first go round and then our second go round, which was on May 13th. We again had more input into that. And then we've got some final comments that have come in on our budget. Those are included today in our supplementary agenda, which at this point, I also would acknowledge that pursuant to section 7.2.1 of Council Procedural Bylaw 2019-79, a supplementary agenda was issued to add item 5N, a report to appoint wharf managers, and attachment to item 5C, and that is a report regarding the updated public comments and questions and responses. We received a number of emails over the last 10 days since our last meeting. So those are the 2 items that have been added. I want to ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest today. Councillor Jaglowitz, I see your hand. And again, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm declaring a conflict. Just a little background. I made a disclosure of a pecuniary interest on October the 18th and October the 28th last year regarding missed opportunities and villas. I was the appellant of the missed appeal, and there was a remote possibility for cost award. LPAT issued its decision in October and dismissed the request for review in March. I received an opinion from the Integrity Commissioner on March 10th that since the matter was completed, I no longer had a pecuniary interest in those matters. But since then, the township asked the tribunal for a clarification of its order, and the response that formal avenues for addressing or seeking clarification was by way of motion. As a result, I contacted the Integrity Commissioner again, and on March the 11th was advised that at this meeting today, May 13th council meeting, I may have a pecuniary interest for the missed and villas agenda items. Those are items 5, K, and L, and therefore I possibly have that incorrect, but they're the 2 items there, and so I'll be refraining from participating or voting on those items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jaglowitz, when we do get to those items, as if you were to be moving yourself from the chair, the only thing I'm going to ask you to do is to turn your video camera off while we are discussing those items. You can obviously still monitor the same way as if you were sitting in the back of the room, but we'll ask that your video is off and then when you rejoin the meeting. So thank you for that. As we move along, just for those people who are watching on Zoom, wherever you are around the world, the motions today have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders just to help expedite this meeting. Voting shall be a sign of all of our members of council raising their hands and holding them up long enough so that we can see those hands, that the clerk is confident in our votes. Will not be considered a recorded vote, but we will all just be seeing how we vote. I'll again ask if it's possible for those people who are councillors around the table, first line of defense, so to speak, if you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom. It will put you in a queue. If that's not for some reason working, I'll try and see your hand raised and get to you accordingly from a question perspective. Okay, let's continue to move on. We are going to move to item 5A. And what we're also doing today, we're not enacting any of our former minutes per se. We're just receiving the minutes from a couple of our meetings. So I'm going to turn right now back. We had a, the recommendations, excuse me, will be enacted. But we had a committee, a General and Finance Committee back when we were allowed to meet back on the 11th of May. So I'm going to turn that over right now for a quick summary report from Councillor Jaglowitz. And if you want to take us through that meeting, that would be greatly appreciated. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is pre-COVID, March 11th meeting. We had, the first thing we had was a delegation from the Muskoka Rock asking us to waive fees for a fire charity event on March the 28th. So I guess that's done. Anyway, we of course supported recommending to council that we waive those fees. Secondarily, there was a delegation, Colleen Kennedy from Safe Quiet Lakes, made a presentation regarding Mirror Lake and 2020 program they would like to enact there for safe boating. The council, at least the committee, sorry, resolved that the township would supply them with 25 standard-sized speed limit signs of 9 kilometers per hour to be posted along there, and that the staff be directed to incorporate and promote Safe Quiet Lakes messaging through our township social media website. Public Works presented a report based on the waiving of fees for use of community centers, which was brought forward from our February 13th meeting. Director Becking highlighted the report for committee. We discussed the costs associated, and it was resolved that the General Finance Committee recommended to the council that we accept the report for information purposes. That was carried. Let me see. And then there was a report from from Public Works regarding custodial services for the community centers, and he reviewed the report to us, and we recommended that we gave him the go-ahead to recommend to council that we procure custodial services in the township's community centers, and that contractor services agreement be prepared. And finally, that he be authorized to sign that agreement. We had a report from our records, from our HR person in terms of our records coordination, records management program. A copy of the report is attached to this. We received the report and recommended to council that the updated policy as presented be approved. And then there was a community services aspect to the Public Library Board meeting minutes, and that's it. Thank you.
Need to unmute my microphone. Thank you. Committee, any questions on Councillor Jaglowitz' report or that committee meeting? Seeing none. Great report, Councillor Jaglowitz. I'm going to go now to our committee chair for planning, Chair Bridgman. Barb, do you want to take us through that meeting, which was held on the 11th of March? No, sorry, on the 12th of March. My mistake.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that was our last meeting when we could all actually get together, and I can't wait till we can do that again, to be honest with you. But anyway, so yes, at our planning meeting, and it's a little unusual today because usually we see the bylaws that we are recommending to council to come back to us to actually pass at the council meeting. So I am going to only comment on the one that we defeated, because we will, when we get back to some sort of normalcy, you'll have that entire package in your report again. So we did defeat one application, and the concern from the committee was it was a very narrow channel, and there was concern that dredging this channel to allow boats down it would cause problems for the environment. So I guess we'll wait and see if that is, if the owners want to come back to us and talk about that again. The other issue, which we are recommending, is our sports courts bylaw. So what we approved to send on to council was that will be a sports courts and recreational services shall mean an outdoor area of land or non-roof structure that is purpose-built, intended to be permanent, and is capable of being used for sports or recreational activities and other similar uses, but excludes ice rinks located in the water body open space zone and swimming pools. So you will, again, you will be seeing that for official approval when we get back to that part of the world. That's my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Bridgman on her report this morning? Okay, thank you. We have some minutes to adopt. I will just comment, Councillor Bridgman, regarding that one application that was defeated. I've had a conversation with the clerk and director of planning because I did actually hear from the applicant who does want to lobby, if you will, to that decision of the committee, but we don't have any bylaws or lack of bylaws here today. So we will have an opportunity when they can come speak to us to reconsider that meeting or that decision of the committee. So hope that's okay. Okay, so we have a number of minutes and action items, and I think I can read these all at once at this particular point. So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that the mayor and council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendation action items and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. March 11th, 2020, General Finance Committee meeting minutes and action items 1 to 7. March 11th, council meeting minutes. March 12th, 2020, Planning Committee meeting minutes and action items 3 to 9. April 15th, 2020, special council minutes. April 24th, 2020, Committee of the Whole minutes and action item 2. May 1st, 2020, Committee of the Whole minutes and action items 2, 3, 4, and 7, excuse me. Any questions on those specifically at this particular point? Any notice of correction in the meeting minutes that we didn't really review, but just in our council meeting minutes? Nothing? Councillor Jaglowitz has a question. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has to do with the May 1st meeting, and it's action item number 3. That item deals with direction to staff to come back with as a revised policy regarding budgeting, and that's a very important motion. And I would just wondered if staff might be able to give some indication of when they thought they might be able to come back on that one to council.
Thank you. I will turn that to the CAO to advise. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, everybody. My hope is that we can come back to council with something prior to the fall.
Okay, Councillor Jaglowitz, I think the idea behind that is we would have potentially a new director of finance in place who would also be involved with that decision making at that time. So are you okay with that?
That's quite vague, so I'll accept that, but I would appreciate if it could be sooner rather than later, because once again, we struggle with our budget. We know we have areas we have to deal with, especially the capital, and I think we should be getting at it as soon as possible. So I would encourage that to come back as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the CAO wanted to comment, but I think just the resolution itself is, I think, pretty clear in that we will be coming back prior to the 2021 budget, which means staff will have it in place for the 2021 budget. Mr. CAO, did you want to comment further?
Thanks, Your Worship. So I can appreciate the councillor's question and the desire to have the policy in place. And I do agree that having the policy in place prior to the budget process beginning would be definitely desirable. I think we need to recognize that when the new director of financial services begins in the position, that they also have a budget software project to initiate provided council approves today's budget. There's a number of things that need to be completed, but I appreciate that that's one of the priorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on all these minutes and action items? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, we are confirmed. That is carried. Thank you. Okay, our next item of business is that of our 2020 budget. I'm going to turn it over just to the CAO for a brief introduction to this. But before we do that, again, I just want to highlight that we've gone through this a couple times, and just for the public who are watching, when the first budget was presented, remember we did this with the absence of a treasurer at the time. Our CIO was acting treasurer. We enlisted support of the district. I want to thank Odie as well as Commissioner Stevens very much for helping us get to this. Back on our first go round of this budget, April 24th, again, there were no considerations from a COVID understanding perspective, and appreciated that. We sent our staff back for a 7-day look and a long, hard look at what we could or couldn't do to get to a more appropriate number. And we came back 10 days ago now and worked our way through to get to what I think most people believe would be more of a responsible number. And so I'll turn it over quickly to our CAO, but again, my thanks to staff in particular and our district staff for helping us get through these very difficult times beyond COVID. And we look forward to our 2021 budget with some new policy direction and also hopefully new director of finance. So, Mr. CAO.
Thanks, Your Worship. Again, good morning, everybody. And my comments essentially mirror what the mayor has already stated, that when the budget was introduced to Committee of the Whole on the 24th of April, committee requested that staff prepare a COVID analysis as well as identify additional cost saving opportunities. And that report came back to committee on May 1st. It was discussed, and there was a summary of a revised budget that was recommended by that committee to council. So the report before you today contains staff's recommendation respecting that revised budget. And as you've indicated, Ms. Stevens, the department heads and I are prepared to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, just before I read the resolution, are there any final comments or questions regarding this? Okay, Councillor Jaglowitz and then Councillor Nishikawa. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I'm no stranger to the budget monies being contemplated here and now. And in fact, when I sold our communications firm in 2011, it brought to a close over 20 years of these very same budgeting business decisions in front of you all today. Personnel, equipment, infrastructure, service levels, and most importantly, its financial ebb and flow, all the while being mindful of our mandate while staying true to our mission. Running the business, I used to say repeatedly. Well, my friends, the future is now. It's staring this township in the face, and this budget does little to face the facts in front of you. Huge and ballooning government deficits, minimum 25% unemployment, Canadian and worldwide GDP decimated, your 2019 actual TML spending in your pocket, knowledge of a spring 10% tax shortfall. What if COVID effects this fall prompt a further 20% shortfall? Overall, that would be a $2 million that you'd need to beg, borrow, or steal. Please ask yourself, is this budget the best you can do here and now? But what do I know? My business and life experiences plus today's reality, which, by the way, no one on this call has ever seen or experienced in their lifetime, equals no CNE, no farmers markets, no Gravenhurst Opera House, and no way of knowing what is around the next corner. These are merely illustrative indicators for you to consider. Therefore, all to see of how commerce and our personal wealth will be significantly affected this year and beyond. It's why I will not support this overly optimistic 2020 budget today. Skepticism with a strong dose of realism is what I am hearing many constituents want. My business acumen tells me that would be a good place to be here and now. They want sensitivity, what the future may hold, not the past. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Much along the same lines as Councillor Jaglowitz, I'm very concerned, and I said this at our first meeting during the budget, that I didn't feel that we were being very sensitive about the current situation, and the more we've learned over the last month, it concerns me more that in fact we're not responding to the situation in the way that I believe that our municipality should be. Certainly, many of you probably read the letters from Mr. Silcox, who is, I've heard from over the years. I respect the gentleman's opinions, and I think that much along the line of other information that I read and through the world, that in fact, this one really, it is naive to think pandemic ends, municipal revenue quickly rebound 2020. That is not going to happen. Or you know, I believe that we are not focusing on a year from now, and I think we need to. I will not be supporting the budget, and in fact, I can't even really identify because of the budget way we received it, and the used to line by line and actually having hands-on line by line concerns me for passing that we don't need to be spending on that. That's why we're supporting the budget.
I'm not sure if you've frozen, or I think there we go. I think we're done. Thank you for that, Councillor Nishikawa. Councillor Kelly, I see your hand in line.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. I, like the previous two, will not be supporting this budget. To be honest with you, had this budget been presented to us last October, I would have probably given it more consideration. But even then, I probably would have found reason to challenge some of the assumptions and some of the proposed spending. We are probably, and I'm going to guess, probably the last of the 400 some odd municipalities in the province to approve our budget for 2020. And that's neither here nor there, except that it puts us in the unique position where we're likely the only municipality in the province that has the opportunity to take a look around and understand how the current economy is ravaging our township, our province, our country. I think the budget as submitted is tone deaf to the reality of bankruptcies, of unemployment, of continued lockdown for an uncertain amount of time. I think it overestimates the non-tax revenue. I think it overestimates the tax revenue. I think it has some incorrect assumptions of inflation. And I just think it's untenable to expect that we can approve a budget or should be approving a budget in the current environment that calls for an 11+% increase in wages and salaries. So for those reasons, I will not be voting to approve this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Jaglowitz's hand was up. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, but I will be supporting this budget. But it's on the understanding that a new process will be created along the lines of a budget advisory committee long before the next budget cycle starts, to review in detail the operating and capital projects, so that we don't have to come to this late in the cycle, and that we all have time to do something that we think is the right thing for the municipality. And I think that would be the appropriate time that we will have a better handle of what COVID-19 is doing to us. And I believe that we can make adjustments. Just so you're all aware, a budget is something in time. It's not static. If things change, the budget can change. And I think we need to be involved in our budget throughout the entire year, not just once a year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to read this motion moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the 2020 report on excluded expenses, Ontario Regulation 28409, regarding expenses excluded from the 2020 draft supported operating budget and capital budget and forecast dated April 24th, 2020, as amended and recommended by the Committee of the Whole on May 1st, 2020, be approved. And that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2020 operating budget and capital budget and forecast dated April 24th, 2020, as amended and recommended by the Committee of the Whole on May 1st, 2020, with total operating expenditures of $16,719,421, total operating revenues of $4,434,170, a net levy of $285,251, and a gross capital expenditure of $5,507,100 for the 2020 and $66,251,800 for the period of 2020 to 2029 be adopted. And one final comment, just for myself, just for those who are listening, this represents a gross increase in our operating expenditures of 2.1% over last year. But when we add the assessment value, so those people who have built new cottages, torn down, which we have a very robust construction industry from an inflation perspective, it works out to a 0.7% increase over last year. Some people, knowing the tax rate with the province and education going down, many people will actually have a reduction in taxes going forward this year. So I've read the resolution. All those in favor? Uh-oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those in favor, and 6. 7. 7. Thank you. All those opposed? 1, 2, and 3. Madam Clerk, you're comfortable that carries. Thank you. Thank you. The tax bylaw, yeah. The waiving of the bylaw?
This one here.
Oh, sorry.
You can just use that. It's the tax rate bylaw.
Okay. Pardon me. I just also want to comment to everybody. I realize not everybody's happy with this budget, and I realize we have lots of different influences geographically, depending where we are within the municipality. And I don't think there's anybody around this table, around our council table, that doesn't understand that. We are, again, as they say, a committee of 10. And so we move forward in that direction. But we have a second bylaw just to read, which actually sets our tax rates, and that's moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-39 to levy and collect taxes for 2020 for the Township of Muskoka Lakes be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? 7. All those opposed? Councillor Nishikawa, I'm not sure if your video is frozen. Didn't vote, so it'll be a no vote anyway, correct? We still,
Oh, yeah. No.
right?
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate that. And we will hopefully, again, with a new Director of Finance for next year, get everybody's queries done, and especially from council to move forward. Next, we have a report from our CAO on our property assessment pandemic tax assistance. Mr. CAO, do you want to comment quickly?
Derek, we can't hear you. Derek needs to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Council, do we have any questions or comments?
We couldn't hear him, Phil.
Okay, I
is
see
on
Councillor
mute.
Roberts with his hand up.
You
Oh,
have
did you
a
not hear?
microphone.
You did not
No.
hear
Any-
the CAO?
No,
Okay,
yeah,
we
no
realized he
microphone.
was on mute. We're going to redo that again.
My apologies, everybody. Council may recall approving a waiver for the penalty for late payment of the 2020 interim or first property tax installment earlier in April, and that deadline was extended to May 31st. This report simply suggests that the deadline be extended to July 31st, and that's for the first installment.
Okay, thank you. Now, do we have any questions? And we can actually hear the report. Councillor Jaglowitz. Thank you. And then Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have a question for staff and then I have a comment. The question is, I would like to know what the cost of this extension would be. And then secondly, as I indicated when we passed the first round, I disagree that this relief should apply to chronic people that chronically don't pay their taxes. And I was hoping that, so first of all, what is the cost? And is there any way of only having it apply to people that do pay their taxes, and those that chronically do not pay them, I don't think should get the benefit.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Jaglowitz. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Stevens, hopefully, to put you on the spot for the rough calculation of what this may cost us. I do have clarification, though, that the interest and penalties are only waiving interest and penalty from the March 28th deadline through till the July 31st. So the chronic defaults before would still have interest and penalties associated. Commissioner Stevens?
Sorry, I have to apologize because I am not prepared for that question. So if you stay tuned, I can try and come up with the number, but no, I thought that, sorry, okay. I'm not prepared for that question.
Okay. So I think in the back of my mind, there was roughly about $150,000 that we have in the past. I'm going back to our budget meeting back from May 1st, somewhere in and around that mid $100,000 number. Maybe I'm high. Councillor Jaglowitz, you had another question? And then I'll go to
it's just supplementary. The reason I asked that question was because during the budget period, we were given some very large numbers. I saw a number 100 and something, 300 and something, and I don't believe we've budgeted for this. And so maybe we need to really understand what we're voting here for. I mean, if this is $50,000, I don't care. But so is it possible that we could get those numbers before we vote?
Okay, Julie, do you want to keep looking for that and I'll go to another councillor for a question, or do you want to try and answer that?
Well, I'll go back to the original one we estimated for the 60-day impact was 120,000. We know that at that point, I think you'd only collected about 55% of your revenues. You're now at 90%. So I would say that the impact of the 60 days extension would be, maybe like 10% of that. So somewhere in the, $12,000 to $24,000.
Okay. Councillor Jaglowitz, hopefully that answers your question. I'll go to Councillor Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Just two quick questions. One, again, I hate to be a broken record on comparison to last year, but really the only thing that I'm curious about is whether the behavior of the taxpayer was in any way changed by this. And have we looked at the number of defaulted payments, I guess, or the dollar value of payments not received, 19 versus 20? Did this actually reach out and make a difference to anybody, or are the numbers pretty much carrying the same? And I'll ask the second question because it may require a little bit of research. I think I asked this in the cow session. It may well have been answered. I just don't recall the answer. When we are collecting on behalf of not just ourselves, but the district and the education tax. When somebody doesn't pay, are we relieved of the obligation to remit that portion of education and district taxation that we would otherwise have to remit had it been paid? And if so, how much is that costing us?
Okay, I think the very last question, I think we are exempt from paying the province because they have allowed that. And also the district is whatever we decide, I think, at this point, but I'll let Julie, especially being our district commissioner, can help with that specifically as well. Julie?
Thank you. So yeah, education taxes were deferred for a period of 90 days. And I'm not clear on whether that is going to be extended, but I would suspect that maybe. So that's provided. So just on the other side of that coin is that because that's been deferred, and you've been collecting up to 90%, Muskoka Lakes is actually doing okay from a tax perspective, like cash flow perspective, right? If you've, and I actually don't know whether you've delayed your payment, but you're actually doing okay on that part. And then from the district perspective, what council has adopted and was that whatever plan the municipality comes up with, the district would take the proportionate amount. So to your point, Councillor Kelly, if someone doesn't pay, then Muskoka Lakes is only remitting the portion that was collected for this period. The question mark is going to be the final payments that are due later in this year. And you're not addressing that right now, but that is something that needs to come forward for consideration. And that's a bigger, it's a bigger conversation for the provincial government as well as the district.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so I have a resolution moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that notwithstanding the provisions contained in bylaw number 2020-02 and further resolution SC 8-15-420, penalty and interest imposed in 2020 interim taxes be waived for an additional 2-month period ending July 31st, 2020. Councillor Kelly has 2 fingers in the air.
Yeah, it's better than anyhow. The risk of asking 2 questions at once is I didn't get the first one answered, relating to the year-over-year comparison on pay through or collections.
I think we're typically at about 85 to 90% at the end of the March, and there's usually about a 10 to 15% carryover. That's a number that's in the back of my mind. I'm not sure whether you have that, Julie, or the CAO would have what we've typically been at the end of March.
I don't have that figure. Derek, do you, or CAO, do you?
Your Worship, my conversation with the Deputy Treasurer indicated just what you said, between 80 and 90% typically.
So we're on target from what we've been in the past. So no impact or tax at this time.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? You've all heard the resolution. All those in favor? Okay, so I see everybody's hand but Councillor Zavis and Kelly, just to confirm you don't want to defer the taxes. Okay. And those opposed? Okay, 8-2. Okay, where are we going here? We've got a couple of winter sand reports. I'm just going to go right ahead and read these resolutions at this time, if I may. My microphone's on. It is. And if you have any questions, Councillor Jaglowitz, did you have a question on the prior resolution, or you have a question on the resolution I'm about to read?
One you're about to read.
Oh, I'm just getting in advance in the queue. I like that. For those who understand, just as a humorous aside in getting in the queue before the question, we were on a call with roughly 180 mayors with the Premier last week. And the meeting was starting at 2:15. We logged in at about 2:03, 2:04. So 10, 12 minutes ahead of time. And I put my hand up in the queue to ask a question. So in 45 minutes of question and answer, our name didn't come up. And that was even 15 minutes before the meeting started. So it was quite interesting with the advance queue. But this resolution is moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that Councillor authorize the award of contract T 2020-14 to Fowler Construction Limited for the bid price of $143,580, taxes excluded, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the award of that contract. Councillor Jaglowitz, you have a question. I see Director Becking is online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it is to the Director of Public Works. In your report, under the financial heading, you indicate that this is about $25,000 over the budgeted item, and you make the statement, the overage in the budget will be made up for by a combination of reduced quantities and reductions in other areas. So I just wonder if you could explain, are we actually approving 143,000 or are we approving a lesser amount?
Director Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. You're approving the 143, and we will make reductions in other areas of the budget to bring the overall budget into line with that which has been approved by council.
So supplementary, so it's not a reduced quantities of this product, but reduced somewhere else in the budget. Is that correct?
That is correct. And as council will recall, you have already approved a number of items. Case in point, the 2 pieces of equipment, the surface treatment of the Moon River Road, all of which came in well under budget. So we will be more than able to come up with the small deficit in the winter sand.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any other comments, questions on this resolution? You've all heard the resolution. All those in favor? Okay, anyone? I don't see Councillor Nishikawa. Video is frozen again. Anyone opposed? There we go. She's in favor. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Carried. Okay, I have another resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved, the council authorize the award of contract T22015 to Feller Construction Company Limited for the bid price of $139,108, taxes excluded, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute necessary documents to proceed with the award of that contract. And that is for supply and placement of granular A. Any comments on this one? Okay, you've all heard the resolution. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Another one just to keep Director Becking busy, moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved, Township Council authorize the township participation in the district contract for the supply and application of emulsified asphalt slurry seal type 2 at various locations in the amount of $186,180, taxes excluded, and the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with that project. Any comments on our slurry seal? Looking forward to it. All those in favor? Yep, unanimous. There we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next item of business is a report regarding, and I'm going to kind of go through this. I might have the director introduce this, and that's our Health Hub commercial sublease. Director Becking, do you want to just give us a quick overview where we're at? Oh, we need you unmute, or we'll unmute you, I think.
There you go. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, as council is aware, we have a tenant in the Health Hub in the lower level. Given the current circumstances, he is requesting relief from the monthly rent, which is $540 a month. He's asking that it be reduced to $200 a month, pending for the next 3 months. The recommendation before you is that that the tenant attempt to take advantage of any federal or provincial programs that are currently available, and should he not be able to secure relief through those programs, that council consider his request.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa, you have a question?
Thank you. Much along the line of understand the particular resolutions about the 10 low, but I also concerned going to be addressing last year that and even this year that we had not been doing statements the value of what the hub is receiving. So the doctor from Cottage Country doctors who essentially part of the hub not been doing any of anything and or saying this all costs, and I community services and that's with this well as now the health services, other is due those numbers and actually because part of the funding being applied, I believe. So I don't know where we stand. Look or recognize how much more actually the tax are put into this. And also, should the province be looking at it further, which I believe is the discussion in the past, the province look into it to actually increase that is being sent to hub. I know, but basically, are we telling anybody this is it?
Okay, so Councillor Nishikawa, I'm not sure if anybody else on council, I think that was very broken up as to what we heard there, unfortunately. But what I did hear is, I think, a bigger question for you beyond this resolution, and that is, what is our economic outlook and revenue stream associated with the health hub? And how are we trying to balance the books so it doesn't hit solely on the taxpayers? Is that a general you were kind of looking for in that?
Oh, that, no, I mean, very, very sad. It in fact is that we noted again a few years ago that we are not telling anybody, not letting it know, we're not the doctors that, and they submit their to the, which is to happen. They're missing a $40,000 that they should be asking for. So those operation costs, for generally part of the request to the, and I don't know what those numbers. I couldn't find them in. It shouldn't be that it was supposed to be that community was going to carry on this thing and all the other costs, all part of a bigger picture. And I just don't know when to get a hand or where we're going to be, okay, enough, somebody else is paying for this. We're going to get this money. In fact, if we don't have a proper thing and that can't go back to the province, pretty difficult. Just say taxpayers, you get for everything, no matter.
Okay. Again, I think I'm not sure if anybody else. I got little bits and pieces of that, and I don't think anyone did. I know I'm looking at our clerk and CIO. I think they had a struggle in trying to understand that. What I am hearing, and by us reducing this, isn't necessarily putting more expense on the taxpayers, but it's reducing the revenue stream at this particular point. I think we need to look at that this way at that particular point. I'm going to go to Councillor Roberts next. And then you're.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and through you to Director Becking. In the report included in the package, there were two alternatives. The second alternative identified that we do the reduction, and then if the gentleman who is leasing the bottom can get a grant that he pay the full amount. Is that option still on the table?
Director Becking?
It's certainly something that council could consider, Your Worship, but I think the way that the recommendation has been put forward to you is that the gentleman should first attempt to take advantage of the programs, and by providing the proof that he's been rejected, that will then give council comfort that he's taken every advantage possible of other programs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bridgman?
Thank you, Your Worship. My comment was just the same. I really couldn't hear Councillor Nishikawa, but my sense was she's got a much bigger issue going here with the whole center. And so can we discuss that at a future meeting? Because to me, what's in front of us right now is simply, are we going to accommodate this gentleman or not? So I just couldn't hear her, but I gather nobody else could either.
Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Just a quick comment. I understood from Director Becking's presentation that one option is waiting to see if this tenant qualifies for relief. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how we're going to monitor or patrol that. And for whatever it is, $340 a month. I honestly don't understand how that really becomes a viable option. This is the beginning of what you've heard from me a long time ago. We're going to be asked for these kinds of things, I think, repeatedly. And in this particular case, he's an unfortunate victim of bad timing, and I'll say that. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so Councillor Kelly, just to sort of help and understand people, we have very few tenants here at municipalities, so people coming to us for rent relief. And the way this resolution is worded, it is actually pretty easy. We don't grant rent relief until he provides us with documentation that the province turned him down. That's the simplest way to say it. So,
and I appreciate that it's not just rent relief that I'm speaking of. It's property taxes. It's all of the non-tax revenue, and that's why we'll just park that. I made my point earlier, but this won't be the last we hear of this kind of request.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. You know, it's unfortunate. We've closed every township building. You can't even get in the township to do business. This gentleman's lease was extended because we weren't ready, and that I would like to see, in all fairness, just asking him to put 3 more months on his lease and wait until he can get started, because like I say, at this point, and that I would support the lower, but I think, and that I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's seen 1 patient and then everything was closed down. So it is a hardship, and that, and yes, we can put them through all the other hoops, but it's just another option. If we talk to them and say, okay, if we waive the 3 months, will we extend your lease for 3 more months at the end of the year? And that, because we're not getting anything from any of our community centers or our arenas or anything else like that. So, you know, I think to be fair, and that is getting it. But if not, I would support this motion. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comments? So I guess I'm in favor of this at this particular point. Yes, we've entered a lease with him, and there's a whole bunch of different subsidies that the provincial and federal government are offering businesses that he may qualify for or may not. If he doesn't, then we can obviously look at a reduction in rent at that point. We also know that theoretically he could just stop paying rent today and we can't kick him out. That's also provincial regulations. So, you know, we're helping everybody's cash flow at the end of the day. So this resolution is moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Whereas the township has received a request from the leasee, Mr. G. Delzell, and it's not pronounced that way, and I forget how to pronounce it now, my apologies, of a portion of the lower level of the Brockenwell Wellness Center, Port Carling Health Hub, for a rent reduction due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now therefore be it resolved that upon receipt of written proof from the leasee of having been refused eligibility and compensation under a commercial rent assistance program, like the Ontario Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, OCECRA program, staff are authorized to reduce the rent amount to $340 for each of the months April, May, and June. Again, that's only on the refusal. Any further comments? All those in favor? There we go. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I think Councillor Nishikawa, we will also, at a future point, we will have Director Becking again bring back to us some more information on the Health Hub, how we can increase revenues and make sure we understand what is truly going on the tax base regarding this. and how people can utilize this. I'd also encourage, if you have some specific questions, because of the internet connectivity is difficult for us to hear, but to maybe just send a letter directly to Director Becking would be appropriate. We can answer some of those questions. So thank you very much. Okay, Manette Working Group. We have a resolution here. For those who don't know, we did appoint some people to the Manette Working Group. One of the things that happened when Councillor Edwards was added to the group from the district, it became an unbalanced committee here at our level, which all of a sudden made it almost a public meeting and more difficult to manage. So we have added, spoken with the Manette Steering Committee, and they've agreed to add an additional individual to that committee, which keeps us as such in balance. So the resolution on the table is moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Whereas Council of the Township of Muskoka Lakes on February 12th, 2020, ratified January 24th, 2020 Committee of the Whole Resolution COW 124/1/2020 to establish a working group to reach consensus to refine policy direction for the resort village of Manette as provided by the Manette Joint Policy Review Steering Committee, MJPRSC. I love big acronyms. And whereas Resolution COW 01/24/01/2020 identified the compensation of the working group, and whereas District Council endorsed the resolution with Resolution 29/2020 on February 18th, 2020, and appointed a District Council representative and alternate to the working group, and whereas there's now desirable to amend the working group compensation, now the compensation of Manette Working Group be amended to add an additional member representative from the Manette Joint Review Policy Steering Committee effective April 27th, 2020. Long and short, this keeps us all within compliance. Councillor Jaglowitz, if you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I assume that the person that will be selected will be respecting the wishes of the chair of the Manette Steering Committee, that we're not appointing the member, that the committee can appoint their own member? Is that correct?
That is correct. The chair, I believe, has appointed the individual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Nishikawa's screen is frozen again. I'm assuming she is in favor of that. That's carried. So motion is carried. Thank you. Glad we don't have any split votes on this. So there we go. Hand is up. There we go. Okay. Manette Working Group, where are we at? Condominium agreement. Councillor Jaglowitz, you're declaring a conflict?
Yes, I'm declaring a conflict, and I'm now leaving the meeting. And I was told to mute my sound and my video. Is that correct?
So again, he can still monitor. You can listen, Councillor Jaglowitz, but we need your video off and your sound. We can't hear you speak. So you need to be muted, which you will be, but we need to turn your video off. That's great. Thank you. Just the same as if you were sitting in the back of the room. Okay. I'm going to turn this one, if I may, I think over to our Director of Planning, Mr. Pink, sort of to introduce this and the next one. There's two condominium use agreements, where we're at, and I know there's some potential amendments to this. Mr. Pink. There he is.
Hello, Council. Attached to your agenda are two brief reports and two draft condominium agreements submitted by Touchstone or Missed Opportunities. I believe Council would be fairly familiar with the properties. There's an extensive amount of planning background to these matters that got us to where we are today. To be succinct, recently there was an LPAT hearing and a decision was reached to approve condominium descriptions on both lands. One of the conditions in both of those approvals is entering into a condominium agreement with the township. And what you have before you are draft condominium agreements, including all the minimum required terms set out in the draft approval. Subsequent to that, I know there has been some correspondence I sent out last night that both developers agreed to at the LPAT hearing, however, were not included in the final order. I've just very recently spoken to the representative for both entities, and they would agree to the inclusion of those terms as in my email of last night. Happy to answer any further questions if there are any.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pink, I guess we could read these resolutions as amended. And do we need to specify how the amendment would be? Council, I'm sure, is all familiar with those number of terms that would be included, but Mr. Pink?
I think it would be helpful to include as amended, to include those additional provisions outlined in the LPAT order and decision. If you give me a moment, I can try to find the exact paragraph or section of the LPAT order we could reference.
Okay, that's great. As you try and reference that, if you can multitask, I know Councillor Kelly has a question. I'm sure you might want to listen with one ear. Sure, it's going to be for you. Councillor Kelly.
I actually think I may have just answered it. I don't think I saw David's note from last night, but I just found it. So I may have a question, but I'll read it quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards, you had a question?
Yes, thank you very much. If we add these to the national agreement, I think maybe David could read them for anybody viewing it and that, because they won't know what is the amendments are. I think it should be read so that the audience knows what is happening and that, and I would support adding all these actual amendments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly has now found a question in reading his comments. No, you're good.
I was actually, I reviewed it. I like Councillor Edwards would like just to have the amendments read aloud so that I'm comfortable they're all in there. That's all. Thank you.
We will do that. I think that Mr. Pink may be able to also put those up on top of the screen, if I'm not mistaken. As we pause and all this happens, by the way, for those mothers on the screen, a happy post-Mother's Day. Hopefully you had a great weekend and were spoiled by your husbands and children and everyone else. So hope everyone enjoyed themselves.
So for the resolution, I think you can reference paragraph 165 of the LPAT decision dated October 16th, 2019. And I'm happy to read my summary of those that I prepared yesterday. I would clarify in their email to me confirming acceptance of those additional provisions. There is one minor tweak or request, just that it stipulate that the requirement with respect to condition number 1, that it would apply to the weeks, the minimum required weeks that they're required to be in the rental pool. So if council wishes.
Do you want to put it up on the screen, David? Just so I think you can screen share your computer now.
Okay, if
So hope you haven't been shopping on Kijiji or anything. That, okay. So paragraph 165. And what was the decision date, David, again? October 16th?
October 16th, 2019. So what you have on the screen in section 165 includes a number of provisions that are already in the draft agreement before you. So what we are adding are the sort of the missing 8 or 9. Again, happy to scroll down the screen if that's what you wish, or read them.
Maybe the ones that were not included, highlight those. I think that might have been covered off in that quick summary memo last night, but I think you can probably scan and highlight what additional would not have been in the agenda package.
Mhm.
What can you do it that way? Or I think your memo of last night was also pretty simple, was it not?
Yes, in the, I think, as I've noted, see if I can find it. So I think it begins largely with D, as you can see on the screen, clarifying that the unit owners shall not be permitted to occupy their units or have the ability to determine or control who is permitted to occupy while they are placed in the mandatory rental program. And again, both proponents would request that just be clarified that it is for the 8 and 12 weeks. E, prohibiting unit owners from receiving mail at the resort. F, requiring unit owners to check in and out when occupying their units. G, preventing unit owners from holding a personal key to their unit and requiring them to obtain their keys from the front desk of the resort each time they check into their unit. H, prohibiting owners from making alterations to their units and requiring the units to be maintained in accordance with the mandatory FF&E program. I, prohibiting unit owners from having a personal landline telephone in their units. J, clarifying that rental of a unit shall only be permitted through the centrally managed rental program. K, clarifying that owners shall that rental rates shall be set by the rental program manager on a market appropriate basis. L, requiring unit owners to register all guests to their units along with their vehicles at the front desk. And M, requiring unit owners to advise of the periods during which their units will be placed in the mandatory rental program by no later than October 31st for the following year.
Okay. Thank you. Council, go back to any questions. I think David Angel. Councillor Kelly's hand was up first, and then I'll go to Councillor Edwards.
Just one more quick question. I believe that the LPAT decision in both cases stipulated an annual report of rental activity for 5 years. I didn't see how we handled that, but I would like to see that extended beyond 5 years, perhaps to 10 years, to give a real read and a real understanding on the actual commercial viability or commercial activity that takes place there, given the circumstances that over the next 2 or 3 years, we may see some really strange, because of the economy, some strange behavior. I'd like to see a longer window than 5 years.
David, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I did speak with the proponents and raised that issue as well. They would prefer not. However, they are willing to increase that timeline. I think they have some concerns with the in perpetuity suggestion of the submission of last night, as I'd have to look at it more closely, but I believe that provision ties to the security, which would mean we would hold the security in perpetuity as well. I think they would be willing to accept the 10 years or an increase over the 5, but would prefer not in perpetuity.
Okay, I think 10 years would be acceptable. Councillor Kelly. I saw Councillor Edwards had your hand up and then didn't have your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. When David was reading the all the not show that they couldn't do renovations to the units, and that is in there as well. So that would actually be 10 rather than the 9 that you sent.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's correct. I think in my email there already is a provision in the draft agreement regarding a mandatory FF&E program.
Right.
So there is a slight nuance when you read them that I didn't, but there is a slight nuance that you wouldn't be able to alter your unit as well, not in accordance with that FF&E program. So we can add that again. I don't believe the proponents would have an issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody
And
else?
I would support Councillor Kelly in making it 10 years for the actual reporting. Thank you.
So I'm not seeing anybody else right now. So David, just a question. So I mean, my comment on this right now, I've got as amended as per paragraph 165 of LPAT decision, October 16th, 2019. The 5 years to 10 years, I think we're in favor of. Do you need that in this resolution? Can we do that just as a note to staff? Are you comfortable? We're just kind of getting very specific in the amendment to this resolution. I just want to be careful.
The resolution simply authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement. So I would look to Cheryl essentially as to what detail or she would like to see in it. I'm comfortable with the more general. I think if you do reference the 165, I think it should make clear that to include those additional provisions of 165. But again, if the clerk is comfortable with the direction and being recorded in the minutes as sufficient for the municipality to execute the agreement, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, just 1 second. I've got it. Okay, so let me try and read this and see if this captures everybody. Moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute and affix the corporate seal to the condominium agreement for application C 2016-5 missed opportunities, Rule 9327, subject to receipt of securities, as amended, as per paragraph 165, additional items, including reporting to 10 years of the LPAT decision, October 16th, 2019. May not be as beautiful, clear language, but I think it's direction. David, you're smiling, saying you don't like the mayor's quick on the fly words. Well, you gave me the first words.
I think it should work.
Okay, if you want to draft something slightly different, so I can modify slightly for the second one. If you want to type on your computer, that would be fine as we speak. Any other comments or questions on this resolution at this time? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Nishikawa is unanimous. There we go. Thank you. So as amended, unanimous. David, are you jotting a next little paragraph to add for the second version here? I think these are pretty much the same.
I haven't. I think you can be consistent. That should be okay.
Okay. As amended. As per, just give me 1 second here. Okay, this resolution is moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved, the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute and affix corporate seal to the condominium agreement for application C 2017-2 Villas of Muskoka Limited Rule 9321, subject to the securities, receipt of securities, as amended as per paragraph 165, adding additional items, including reporting to 10 years of LPAT decision, October 16th, 2019. Any further comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much. Thank you, Evan, and thank you, David, for that. Greatly appreciated. Okay, next resolution on the table. Corey, do you want to do a quick introduction? I think this is bang the table.
Oh, wait.
Oh, we need to get Councillor Jaglowitz back. Councillor Jaglowitz can hear us. We'll get him back into the meeting. There we go. Welcome back, Frank.
I'm back. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Corey, an engagement, community engagement software that was included in the budget. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, everyone. Today's report provides an overview of the proposed internet-based external and internal engagement platforms. Staff continue to look at areas where we can improve communications with the public. Online community engagement software is being used currently by a number of municipalities to engage with the public and local stakeholders. The implementation of a community engagement platform for Muskoka Lakes would provide us the opportunity to reach out to the community, gather further input to help us make decisions on policies, programs, and service levels. Additionally, we can use this platform to keep the public updated on the current status of major projects in the municipality. The software itself includes multiple tools that we can use for this type of engagement, such as surveys, polls, question and answer forms, all within a centralized location. Some examples currently that we could look to use the platform for would include our strategic plan development, official plan review, future budgets, and municipal elections. Additionally, we would propose to use the same platform for an internal staff engagement website. This platform would allow, again, a centralized location for staff to access internal initiatives, health and safety training, and again, have a central spot for forms and templates to ensure consistency throughout the municipality. I'm happy to answer any further questions on these proposed platforms. Thank you.
Okay, Council, do we have any questions on this particular item? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Corey. Corey, if I read the report correctly, there's I'm just going to round numbers, a $9,000 upfront purchase price of software, then a $9,000 per year licensing fee. Is the software run on our servers or run on the vendors? And the second question I have would be, who owns the data in the event that we move into a different direction in the future?
Corey?
Yes, I can. So the sites themselves are hosted by the provider, Bang the Table. In terms of the data itself, I could look into that further with the provider. It would be ours, though. I'm assuming through the agreement that we would look to review with them before executing the sites themselves.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, a follow-up, or are you okay?
Yes, I think that should be done before you execute the contract with the vendor, just to make sure that we have full ownership of the data and that we can use it if we decide to go in a different direction.
Agreed. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, Township Council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Bang the Table for the provision of community engagement and internet software at a cost of $9,000 plus HST, as highlighted in the report entitled Community Engagement Internet Software, dated May 13th, 2020. Any further comments? All those in favor? I think Councillor Nishikawa is in favor. There we go. Carried. Thank you. Okay, let's thank you, Corey. Let's go to our Fire Chief, Chief Morrell. I want to talk about our master fire plan.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, presenting to Council today on a report that provides an overview of the value of master fire plans, the status of the current master fire plan, and the need for its update. Respecting the current 2014 master fire plan, and given that most of its recommendations have been addressed, You have hired a new fire chief. Recent provincial regulatory requirements for community risk assessments, as well as council's desire to review a 10-year capital forecast in more detail. A review and update of this plan is recommended. Accordingly, completion of the update of this plan was also identified in the 2020 capital budget. Should council concur that master fire plan update is warranted, a request for proposal for consulting services will be recommended and completed to see that it is issued. The consultant selected will be required to analyze and provide comments and recommendations based on continuous improvement areas identified on page 3 in the report. There are various areas there for you to review. A master fire plan is considered a strategic blueprint for fire protection that addresses a key term inside the Act of local needs and circumstances in a cost-effective manner. I now stand open for your questions through you.
Thank you very much, Chief Morrell. Council, any questions on this? You want to go out and do an RFP? Okay, I think we're good. Moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by, oh, sorry, someone had their hand up, I missed. Ruth. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Hear me?
Yes.
I'm in favor of moving forward at this time. There is information that is and has been for a number of years concerning the index saving, I'll call it. That's one of the biggest things that I discuss in the, but I think that we should be moving forward with this RP right at the time. Again, I'll go to the budget, feeling very strongly that we should not be moving forward on issues that are not going to change service levels this year. I believe that we're taking a stronger step of trying to reduce it at this time. But I want to have a better understanding here with the public, because I talk to my ratepayer, like my area, they don't get the saving we keep talking through the shuttle service. So it's a bigger picture. I don't think this forum is the right way to this discussion.
Okay. If I heard that correctly, Councillor Nishikawa, you are not interested in doing an RFP at this time, or you want to make sure that the RFP is all inclusive to evaluate potential cost savings going forward? An evaluation of, do we need Superior Tanker Shuttle, all of those things. You are not in favor of this. Okay. Councillor Jaglowitz?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment actually applies to 3 or 4 items that we've just passed. Is this a good time for me to raise it? Or do you want me to wait till this passes and then raise it? I can explain what it is if you want. Basically, I'm saying certain of these resolutions we're passing now, including the waiver of interest, the possibly the 9,000 software and things, are items that aren't necessarily in the budget. And so going forward, when there's items coming forward to us that aren't in the budget, that are over a certain limit, we should be coming forward with a budget modification at the same time, showing how we're going to pay for it. And I just like to try to have that introduced starting now. We just passed our budget. If we've modified it now, we should then we should come forward with a budget amendment. And you understand what I'm saying. That's the policy the district follows. And again, Director of Public Works says 25,000 more in winter sand. He says it's coming from somewhere else. He should just indicate that. So it's I hope, and I understand we don't have a treasurer at the moment, but we should start that policy as soon as we can. Thank you.
So, and I think absolutely there's a practice of budget variance reports in our township budget for 2020. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Morrell, but we have a consultation budget in there for a master fire plan, which is contemplated. And though there won't be any changes specifically this year, as I think Chief Morrell has said, we are looking to the future to make sure we have the right fire service for our municipality, and is also part of a regulation. So, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is strictly a process for me. I cannot hear Councillor Nishikawa when she speaks almost all the time. Is there any way that we can technically look at being able to hear her for our next meeting? Because I know she's got lots of background and knowledge, and it's just, it's really hard for me. I did not get what she said this time again. So that's just my comment.
I agree with you, and I think we may have to look at Councillor Nishikawa. Either you have to move potentially to a community center or someplace with a little bit better internet. I know one of the other councillors has already done that because their own home internet wasn't quite stable enough, because we all have value and input to add to every discussion, and it's difficult when we can't hear. So I concur with that, Councillor Bridgman. Any other comments on this master fire plan right now? So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that staff be authorized to issue a request for proposal, or RFP, for consulting services to complete a review and update the township's master fire plan. Any further comments? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, got that. Thank you, Ruth. That is carried though. Thank you very much. We're going to turn over right now. We appoint wharf managers every year. And Mr. Becking, I think there's some slight amendment to this bylaw though, that we would going forward be able to authorize you to do so. Do you want to comment quickly? Waiting for video and audio of Director Becking. Might be on a phone call. No, there he is.
Sorry, I couldn't find the screen. Anyway, yes, Your Worship. As Council is aware, we have a wharfs and docks and wharfs bylaw. For 4 of those locations, we appoint a wharf manager annually. The decision comes back to Council every year. Given the current circumstances, we're asking that you appoint the individuals indicated in the report for the coming year, and that in the future that this matter be delegated to staff. I'll bring forward, subject to your permission, a further report with a draft amended bylaw and policy that will allow us to deal with these issues in a more efficient way at a later date.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, Council, on this particular? I'm going to read the resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Jaglowitz. Be it resolved that the wharf managers for the 2020 season are as follows: Beaumaris Wharf, Mr. Michael Buwilda; Beaumaris Marine, Windermere Wharf and Maple Leaf Bay Wharf, Mr. Randy Haid; Windermere House, Foots Bay Wharf, Mr. Jeff Dixon, the Cove Marina. Further, the Director of Public Works prepare a policy and an amendment to bylaw 2003-29 to delegate authority to appoint wharf managers to staff for the operation and management of the wharves identified in Schedule C of bylaw 2003-29. Any further comments? All those in favor? Carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I think we are good with all of that. We've already advanced our tax bylaw, so that one's done. And I think we're going to go into closed session. So have a resolution moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that Council in closed session convene at 11:33 a.m. for personal matters about an identified individual, including municipal or local board employees and labor relations or employee negotiations, one matter, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, one matter pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. No. Oh, who am I missing? Okay. So if we count them as a no vote, we're still going into closed. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, it's carried. Okay, we're going to turn off the video recording right now. Stop broadcasting YouTube. We're going to say goodbye to our staff, other than our clerk and our CAO. And we will tell you, yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute break? Council, leave your videos on. We're going to shut everything down and we'll come back in 5 minutes. How's that? Okay, bye-bye. See the clock on the wall.